see you all. Hope you're having a good time at TechX. I'm having a great time. I'm meeting so many new people and having such great conversations. I'm really happy to be here. Today, I'm going to share a pretty recent, or actually ongoing, use case that we've been working with one of our customers that plan a huge migration of connected devices onto our platforms. But first, I want to take a couple of minutes just to introduce myself and where I work and what we do. So my name is Christina. I work as a software engineer at CloudAMQP. So the main thing that I do is I write code for one of our message brokers that's called LavinMQ. But occasionally I get to go out on conferences and talk a little bit about what we do. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm located in Stockholm, Sweden. So me and my colleagues, we traveled in 2 days ago. And we're all really happy to be here, see London, and yeah, it's going to be nice. So a little bit about me. In my free time, I like to be outdoors. You can see me here, two different separate occasions, one in the summer, one in the winter. This time of year, I usually love to go skiing. So yeah, a little bit about me. What about where I work, what I do? I come from CloudAMQP, and we run managed messaging infrastructure. And what does that mean, you might ask? It means that we host instances of message brokers like RabbitMQ and LavinMQ in the cloud as a service. So I suspect some of you aren't super familiar with the message broker technology, so I'm just going to summarize it really quickly. A message broker, it facilitates message queues and kind of streaming infrastructure. So typically you have clients or IoT devices that connect to the broker, and then they publish and consume data from queues. And they do that instead of kind of communicating directly with each other. So you might ask, why is this useful? Well, so if your systems deal with kind of unreliable connections, which I know a lot of IoT systems do, the broker is going to persist these messages even when devices drop in and out of connection, and nothing is going to get lost because the message queue and the message broker is going to persist those messages. It also helps you kind of decouple your systems. So sensors, they can fire off data without really caring whether the processing service is momentarily down or if it's particularly slow in this moment. So that matters when you're working with these low power kind of microcontrollers that have limited memory, and they're just designed to kind of send data and move on, not kind of hold the state or implement complex retry logic, basically. And then another example is when your system has back pressure. You can think of small smart buildings or industrial facilities where you have thousands of these sensors all reporting data at the same time. These queues can absorb that back pressure while your applications and your servers can kind of process the data flow in the capacity that it has. So yeah, that's just a few things to kind of give you context of what the actual software that we provide is. And we've been doing this since 2012. And today we have tens of thousands of instances running all across all major clouds. And our customers, they range all from startups to large enterprises. Some come to us because they're kind of just getting started and they don't want to manage their infrastructure themselves. They might not have the knowledge or the capacity to do that. Others come because they have tried running it themselves and they realize it's too much work for them. And some come to us because they're kind of hitting scalability challenges and they need help figuring out the next step for their architecture. So what we've found over the years is kind of the biggest value that we can provide to our customers. It comes from the support that we give them when they navigate these types of solutions. So we're there from the beginning. We help them optimize their setups and plan their architectures all along the way. And if something isn't working the way they should, our engineers are there to help them through and kind of pinpoint and get the right solution for them. Okay, now I've told you a little bit about what we do. Let me tell you all about this customer case that I was talking about in the beginning that we're currently working on. Okay, so this customer recently acquired a company that manufactures heat pumps. And these are connected devices that are installed in homes all across Europe. And with that acquisition, they also inherited these almost 1 million devices. And they're processing around 400 billion messages every month. And the goal for them is to surpass 1 million devices by the end of 2026. So we have a pretty big migration to do. And before this acquisition, they were already a customer of us, but they had a much smaller setup. So this new migration is going to be a much more complex solution. And after this acquisition, the devices that came with or were inherited through this acquisition were running on Azure IoT Hub. And they had a couple of reasons that were kind of pressuring them to migrate from there. First of all, they had features that they relied on that were being deprecated. So that's a pretty big thing that makes you want to move. And then, of course, at this scale, cost was becoming a problem. So that's something that we kind of took into account when we were working with them. And on top of that, the management team had decided that they wanted to start moving towards being cloud agnostic. And we support all clouds, so we could help them with kind of trying to achieve that. So yeah, they decided to consolidate everything into the CloudAMQP platform. And they came to us wanting this migration with a list of requirements from their previous setup, of course. So they were basically asking, can you support these things so that we can migrate all of our things to your platform? So they were building their own public key infrastructure and wanted devices to authenticate with client certificates instead of like usernames and passwords. They also wanted custom domains with their own TLS certificates so that their devices could connect to their URLs instead of ours. And at their scale, everything, of course, has to be managed as infrastructure as code. So a full Terraform automation was a must for them. And on top of that, they needed to handle 1 million persistent MQTT connections. So we looked at this list and we talked it through internally. We said we can absolutely do all of this, but we don't have everything ready at this point in time. Some of it was going to require a lot of work for us and implementing some fixes and new features. So we kind of had a choice here. We could tell them, let's check back in a couple of months, we'll see if we have it ready. Or we could offer to start a partnership and work through these things together with your engineers and kind of tailor a solution that's going to work really well for you. And they were happy to do that, so we were happy to jump on it, and that's what we did. So what follows here is like a series of engineering sessions, and these weren't sales calls. They were like working meetings where we sat down and we went through all of the technical details together with their engineers. And we started with the client certificate authentication that I mentioned earlier. They walked us through this public key infrastructure. They walked us through their security model and how they plan to manage certificates across 1 million devices. And one of the first questions that we had from our side is, how does this scale with 1 million devices? Are we going to store a certificate for every device? That's going to be a problem. So we came up with an approach that we wanted to upload only their root CA certificates to the message broker, and then on our side, the message broker side, we can validate the full certificate chain. So we could kind of minimize the amount of certificates stored. And the way only need to trust like a handful of root CAs, not 1 million of them, which is kind of hard to do. So now these root certificates, they need to live somewhere, and they usually, what they do is we call a trust store, which is basically a list of these certificate authorities that the message broker trusts. And they wanted to host that trust store on their own infrastructure, which is going to be served over HTTPS using certificates signed by their internal CA. Their security team preferred this over like a VPC peering solution because that network peering kind of adds management overhead and yeah. But this creates what we call during this meeting the chicken and egg problem, where the broker needs a CA certificate to verify that endpoint. So how do you verify the trust store before you actually have the trust store? So we worked through that, and together we kind of landed on a solution where they could configure a separate CA certificate specifically for verifying that particular endpoint. And we kind of went like this back and forth. With the Terraform automation work, we kind of did the same way. We shipped updates to our provider, and they tested it, and they gave us feedback, and then we iterated. So, for example, at one point, they needed a small change in how certificate versioning worked, and we shipped a fix the same day, and everybody was very happy. So, just to kind of give you a sense of how we work together. So I'm just going to also quickly cover a little bit about the technical architecture that we created with them. So when you're dealing with a million devices, you're typically not running just one message broker. Rather, you're going to run a couple that's going to balance that load of all of these millions of connections. And they were already running a message broker software called LavinMQ before this as a customer. So they knew that fairly well. LavinMQ, it comfortably handles around 100 connections per message broker. So that's kind of the balance that we were aiming for here. So 10 brokers are going to be sharing that load that they're going to migrate onto our platform. So we know as engineers that we have a broker called LavinMQ that we build in-house that is much more resource efficient, and it can sustain a lot more connections per broker. So there's a potential to optimize that down the line and kind of cut costs a little bit. But right now, they've tested this setup and they trust it. And they have a migration to get through, basically. So we're going to go with what's comfortable for right now, and then we're going to open up for improvements along the way. So once this migration is done, switching brokers is a very small step for us to do. So what matters more is that we've built a relationship through this process where we kind of understand their architecture and they know how we work, so we can keep iterating and make things better as we go. So we started this conversation about doing this migration late 2025 in December, and they had a target of going live with the first couple of devices in early 2026. And we stayed in regular contact throughout that. We did check-ins every few weeks, and we were working on a solution together. And now, actually, coming up this week, we're doing the first production deployment of our service with 60,000 heat pumps we're going to be deploying next week. And yeah, that migration is going to continue through the whole year. And by the end of 2026, we expect to have over 1 million devices running through our infrastructures. So now what do we as a service provider kind of take with us from working on a project with a customer like this? And I have 4 things here. The first one being, it's really good to listen to your customers' needs before you start building your product. We spent a lot of time in these early meetings just kind of trying to understand their world, their PKI setup, their security requirements, their operational constraints, and all of that stuff. And that understanding kind of shapes everything that we build. If we just start coding and building things based on their initial requirements list, we would have gotten things wrong probably and iterated way too many times. So it's really, really good to be able to talk with your customers about their needs so that you can understand them as a provider. And second, I want to say that it's really good to meet customers where they are. So I spoke that they knew LavinMQ and were comfortable. They had tested it and they had deadlines. So we don't push our own solutions just for the sake of it. We help them succeed with what they trust in the moment, and then we left that door open to optimize later on. And third, features that are built for one customer become features that are used by all customers. Everything that we build for this customer is, of course, now available to all of our customers, and the trust, that's the trust store configuration, the customer certificate support, the Terraform automation. So customer work and working like this with the customer, it isn't just a distraction from product development. It's the actual product development. And finally, trust comes from being honest about the gaps and limits of your products. So when they first came to us, we didn't have everything, but since we are upfront about it and honest, and ask them to help us figure it out together, that honesty early on really made like a whole partnership possible, and we really value that. So yeah, when someone asks me what it looks like to migrate 1 million devices under real deadlines and evolving requirements, this is the type of story that I really like to tell. We don't need to have everything ready. What matters is that we can move quickly and figure it out together, and that's how we really like to work. So thank you so much for taking your time and listening to me talk a little bit. My team is in the booth 154, I think. So if you have ideas or thoughts or questions, I would really like it if you stopped by so we could have a discussion. I don't know if there's time for some questions, but yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Does anybody have any questions for Christina at the moment? Okay, no, you can always, as I say, go visit them on their booth.
Thank you.
Christina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a break.